Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Business of Inner Peace. I'm your host, Erin Jean. Super excited because we have a guest today. Haven't had a guest in a while. Her name is Brandi Cox, and she is a successful business owner that's devoted to helping others believe in themselves. She was once bogged down with a negative mindset and limited growth potential, and she understands how difficult it can be to change. Although addiction, adoption, death, and suicide during her childhood shaped her trauma and her life's trajectory, she has healed that through a path of forgiveness and understanding. And she has also written a book called In Better Hands. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with her today. Welcome to the Business of Inner Peace. I'm your host, Erin Jean, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's pretend we're sitting in my living room enjoying a cup of coffee or tea and getting to know each other just a little better. That's what I love. I love getting to hear your story. I love feeling connected by the spirit of understanding that our stories bring. Today, I'm sharing some of my story, but I hope someday soon you'll be telling me yours. Listen, I know that you're feeling overwhelmed with life and nothing is exactly how you'd like it to be. Your marriage is not what you hoped for. Motherhood is harder than you imagined, and you've lost yourself somewhere in the mix of responsibilities. Well, if you're ready to bring some more peace and joy into your life, reconnect with God who made you, and start living a life you love, then grab your cup of coffee or tea, and let's dive into today's show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I always say this whenever I have a guest. I just love stories. I think that stories are the way we've communicated as humankind for forever, and it helps us to connect to each other quicker when we can know someone's story. So if you would be so kind to just share with us, how you ended up getting to this point of wanting to have a business and write a book. Tell us a little bit about your life.
Thank you. So, I was born and raised in Eastern Kentucky on the border of Tennessee and West Virginia, or I'm sorry, Virginia and West Virginia. Now live in Virginia. So, I'm about 45 minutes from my hometown. Um, the reason that I felt like this book was important is my childhood was not a typical childhood for most kids, but I think that it is more relatable than what I realized after I started sharing my story, and that is that I was adopted by my paternal grandparents at around 6 weeks old. Um, my birth parents were not married. They had dated, lived together, both suffered with addiction, but had not committed to each other long term. So, at 6 weeks old, I transitioned to living with my paternal grandparents. My birth father did come and go a lot, actually lived with us for an extended amount of time. He was in and out of jail a few times. He did go to rehab, and there were some stints when he lived outside of the home. But basically, besides being in jail or in rehab, I saw him every day of my young childhood. My birth mother, on the other hand, lived less than a mile from us. Actually, I had to pass her home to get to my home for the majority of my childhood. Um, her and I did not have a relationship at that time. I always knew who she was, and she was nice to me, but definitely not like a mother-daughter or even an aunt top niece relationship. It was more pleasantries. Um, my birth father continued to spiral out of control with addiction. He had a learning disability, and, really, he just got to a low point in his life when I was in 3rd grade and decided to take his own life. He did that in my childhood home, in the home that he actually grew up in as well, and I was there that morning and witnessed what had happened. That, between adoption and his suicide, left me with the fear of abandonment. It left me with a low self-esteem, that I could be easily discarded or not thought of when other people were kept. And it really left me struggling to trust others. So there was a barrage of feelings that was going on, and I was so young to not understand what it even meant and what I was going through at the time or how to process it. And, then we didn't do counseling and you didn't talk about your feelings like you do now. That was a very scary time for all of us. Um, my grandparents did the best they could, but, they were struggling. That was their son, and they were struggling with his suicide and death and their own guilt. I had guilt. So it was a very hard childhood. It was, I referenced in the book at one point that I went from a happy child that was playing to basically, I don't wanna say lifeless, but, the light went out of my eyes. Like, the laughter was gone, the being a child was gone, and I had stepped into an adult life before I knew what to do with it.
Wow. That's a lot. I'm gonna just to take a breath with you. I wish I could hug you through the screen. Obviously, you're doing okay now, and you're a beautiful, vibrant person. So, tell us a little bit about that journey that helped you make a shift.
Well, thank you. It, definitely was not a journey that came easy or fast. I struggled throughout school. Went to college, didn't finish college, didn't know at the time that it was depression, that was really just I had no energy or no desire to do anything. Pushing forward was just not an option. I couldn't understand how other people were able to go to school, play sports, keep good grades. Just getting up and going to school was exhausting for me. And so kinda just worked some odd jobs for a little while until I got pregnant with my first son, and I knew then, after he was born, that I had 2 options: to either heal myself or pass my trauma down to him, and that was my decision. So, my birth mother, was in jail at this time, so I didn't really have any contact with her, and I started going to counseling. The family that raised me, that I refer to as mom and dad, were amazing parents. They did not drink, they did not do drugs, they went to work, they volunteered, and they cared for their family. But they didn't talk about feelings either. You just did not do that. You gritted your teeth and you got up and went on the next day. So when I started going to counseling, I went an hour away because I didn't want any of my family to know that I was going. And after my first counseling appointment, I walked out and was like, "I cannot believe she got me to say the stuff that she got me to open up. I'm not going back." So she had already made me an appointment, because you don't wanna be rude, right? They're sitting there and they're like, "Would you like to make an appointment for next week?" "Sure." So I get in the car and I'm like, "I'm not going back. I cannot do this." I felt guilty because I felt like I was talking negatively about my family. So the week went on and I just kept putting off canceling it. And then it was like, well, I can't be rude and not show up because someone else could have used that appointment. So I kept going. And that went on for probably a month or so. After every visit, it was always my last. And then it gradually started to change to where she was able to help me understand some of the things I was seeing in myself that I didn't like, why I had those attributes. And then as we were able to start working on some of that, it was probably one of my favorite things to do, was to go to counseling because I could tell I was getting better. I could tell I was feeling better about myself and that I was being more productive, and I was letting go of some of the anger, because anger is a weight that until you carry it and you carry it for a long term, that you don't realize how much joy it takes out of your life. So, that was my first step to really getting better was counseling, and that's actually kinda how the book started because we would get to some parts that it was very hard for me to articulate what I wanted to say, but I could write it, and then she would read it and we would talk about it, and that's kind of where the book notes came from originally. was that treatment plan.
Wow. What an amazing counselor you must have had to have really helped you get to that point. That's pretty profound.
I went for years, and she is retired now, and I did transfer to a new one after she retired, but she was great. She was just very patient and was easy to open up to, and I appreciate that. I really think that she was put in that place at the right time to help me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're feeling better. You've gone to counseling for a while. And then
Mhm.
an idea hits you to write a book? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to write a book, but I wasn't ready at the time because it was I would start and then stop, start and stop. I decided to go back and get my bachelor's degree. So I went back and finished college. Both of my parents that raised me passed away then, both from cancer. So that was another loss. And I started working for the American Cancer Society kind of in honor and in memory of them for a while. Knew I wanted to make a difference in the world, knew I wanted to help others, just didn't know exactly where I wanted that focus to be. Kid Our son was my first priority. My daughter hadn't been born at the time. When she was born, we decided that I would stay home with the 2 kids, and my husband traveled for work. So that really gave me a lot of time to work on the book and kind of get an outline of what I wanted to say. And in the middle of that, COVID hit. So we were stuck at home, all of us were, kinda put that on the pause during that time because the house was ran over with 4 people.
Yeah.
Um, and then we opened up our first business, the gym, fitness facility in our local town. And, after it got on its feet, I jumped back in and finished the book. So the book has been off and on for years, like almost 15 plus years. Um, And I still think today I could go back and tweak, and I think that's just part of it, that you can still change some of the layout and the wording years later. At some point, I had to let it be the way that it was.
Yeah. So, what would you say was the real key to you finding inner peace on your journey?
Finding, you know, when we talk about forgiveness, I did forgive both of my parents, my birth parents, but I think it was empathy as well, being able to not think about myself and think about the place that they were in their life that led to the decisions that they made, and understanding why those were the decisions, why that was the only option that they saw forward at the time, and being grateful for the gift that they gave me because I did have amazing parents that have supported me and loved me throughout my whole childhood. So, ultimately, they gave me something that they could not have ever given me themselves, and being able to step back and look at what I received instead of what I lost, and understand why I lost that, because I don't think it was them being cruel. I think it was the only option they saw for me at that time and for them. Um, so I think that's a lot of it, having empathy and being able to forgive and understand why someone may have made a decision that affected your life and being able to process that.
Yeah. It sounds like being able to grasp a different perspective on all of it was really powerful for you.
It was.
I love that. Well, I am a survivor of childhood trauma, and I know that whatever the trauma is that you experience in childhood, you usually come out the other side having something that you're really passionate about, particularly for children, because it comes out of that place of your own, yearning and longing that you have for your little girl, for your own inner child. And so I just wanted to know, is there anything for you that you have some passion around for children?
Yes. Mental illness. I I think that we've made great progress, mental illness being accepted and depression and anxiety. But I still think we have a ways to go. I think focusing on children that may not have the best home life, that may be growing up with what families, it doesn't always have to be addiction. They may be going through a really bad divorce with their parents, that they're still suffering. I think being there for the children that do not have the support at home is so important because they're not going to be able to see a way out of the life they're living at home unless someone else comes in and helps them see that there are other options. I can understand and respect as a parent not letting my child go certain places because of certain things that they do. But I would never tell that child they couldn't come to our house or they couldn't go to the movies with us because it is important for that child to see that they do have support and that there are other options out there. And personally, we've lived this. For instance, kids that grow up maybe in a home that is not, that maybe does have alcohol and drinking. They're gonna know more than children that don't. They're gonna have a different vocabulary probably. They're used to different actions, and I can understand not wanting your child exposed to that and knowing that that's okay. What we have tried to do with our kids is use that as a teaching tool, that we don't talk like that, we do not do that. This child doesn't understand any better. What we do is show them that they can't do that here. They can't do that with us. And does that probably work with every child? No, but there's gonna be a percentage that it will stick with. And I think that's so important to just not judge kids and help them through this.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely can see from the vantage point of, when you've got kiddos that are coming from a family that has different values than you have, it can be challenging and, you're not wanting to parent somebody else's kiddo, right? Um, and I can see that it can be difficult. There have been times, when some kids just haven't been a fit to come to our house because of the behavior that they exhibit. But I can see on the other hand what you're talking about. It is really part of the I'm a believer in Jesus and that is part of the Great Commission, right? To be caring for children and widows, and even if those kiddos have their parents living, in many ways they've been like emotionally orphaned, um, because they're not being raised in a way to feel like they matter and that somebody cares about them. So I love that commission of let's uh let's invite them in and allow them to spend time with us and try to give them some direction as best we can. And obviously, like you said, won't always work. There might be some kids that are really resistant to that, but for nothing else, just to like what you said, though, show them that there's something else possible. Even just that one experience could plant a seed in their mind that, oh my gosh, not every family looks like mine, right? And that there's something else. So I really love that. I love that passion you have. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience about, if they're still struggling with the trauma of their past, which way you would point them?
I love journaling now. I think journaling has been a huge help for me. It's so much easier to write things that you just can't get out verbally.
Mhm.
And maybe it's some things that you wouldn't want to even say out loud. I think journaling is very important. I think counseling is very important. And I also think that you cannot use your past forever as a crutch of why you're doing what you're doing in the future. At some point, you have to reconcile what happened in the past and find a way to move forward. And I know that may look different for everyone to some degree, but it's not fair to your children. It's not fair to your spouse. It's not fair to other people that come into your life if you continue to use your past as a crutch. So it's very important to heal that before you pass it on generation after generation.
Hmm, I love that. So proud of you for doing the work, and I hope that your family is able to articulate that to you as well, because you really did choose a totally different trajectory, and that's amazing. Share with us where the audience can connect with you or how they can get your book.
I am on Facebook and Instagram both, and it's Brandi Cox, author. My book, In Better Hands, is on Amazon, and then I do have a website as well, and it's brandycoxauthor.com.
Awesome, and I'll be sure to put all of that in the show notes too, so you can click it there. Brandy, it has been a pleasure getting to talk with you. Thank you so much for just being open and vulnerable and sharing your story. I trust that there is somebody out there today that needed this encouragement and it will bless them. If you're open to it, I have a little tradition here whenever I have a guest on of just saying a prayer for them. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Oh, dear God, we just thank you for this day. I thank you so much for Brandy. Thank you for how you've guided her life and all of the resources that you've brought in. I just ask that you continue to bless her family, bless her message, that many, many people would read her book, that they would be encouraged and that they would be motivated to stop generational trauma. And we just thank you so much for this beautiful day you've given us and this time to connect. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're feeling blessed by the content here, the number one way you can show me is by leaving me a written review of the show. I'd be forever grateful. Knowing that you're out there listening helps me know that I'm truly living out God's purpose in my life. The other thing you can do is take a screenshot of this episode, share it with a friend, or better yet, tag me on your Instagram stories. Remember, you are seen, known, and loved. May God richly bless you today. All my love, Erin Jean.